No one in the quiet town of Granger, Kansas, ever imagined that Caleb Whitaker, the aging farmer with a weather-worn face and a soul steeped in sorrow and silence, would one day become a name whispered across the country with awe and reverence. But heroism has a peculiar way of blooming not in the spotlight, but in the shadows of ordinary lives, and sometimes it takes just one selfless act to light up a world that has long forgotten the quiet hearts who carry the weight of goodness in their bones. For decades, Caleb lived alone on a modest patch of farmland on the edge of County Road 9, a place where the only sounds were the rustle of wind in the wheat, the bark of his loyal dog Boone, and the soft hum of the tractor that had outlasted most of the town's machinery. Widowed young, Caleb had once dreamed of a home filled with children, laughter, and Sunday suppers on the porch with his beloved Ella, but life, in its strange cruelty, never gave them children of their own, and when Ella passed 10 years ago from cancer, Caleb's world shrank into a quiet rhythm of mourning and memory, of tending crops and whispering to the photograph he kept of her in the kitchen window, his only company aside from Boone and the occasional wave from schoolchildren biking past his field. He was known, but not really known, a man people respected from a distance, often saying, "Good ol' Caleb, salt of the earth," but never asking how he spent his evenings or whether he ever felt the aching emptiness of a house too quiet for its own walls. The summer of that unforgettable year came like any other, blazing heat, endless skies, the scent of corn and sweat in the air. But what happened one blistering afternoon would change not just Caleb's life, but the heartbeat of the town forever. It started with smoke. Caleb was in the barn repairing a loose hinge on the chicken coop when he noticed the sky turn a color it shouldn't have, an eerie, unnatural hue of gray rising above the trees lining the south edge of his land, the same woods that curved around a narrow trail leading to the river. Moments later, he spotted the flash of yellow, 3 school buses parked haphazardly near the tree line, doors flung open, the air around them filled with shouting and the panicked cries of children running, stumbling, coughing, their small bodies fleeing a thick black cloud that curled like a serpent toward the sky. Caleb didn't hesitate. He didn't stop to think of his age or his bad knee or the fact that his heart pills were sitting in a dish back on the kitchen table. He just ran, yelling for Boone to stay behind, feet pounding the scorched earth as he charged toward the chaos. The fire, later traced to a burst propane tank from an unauthorized campfire, had spread fast, too fast. There had been a summer nature program that day, one led by college volunteers who, in their inexperience, had lost control of both the fire and their nerves, abandoning the children in a panic as the blaze leapt across the dry underbrush like a starving beast. Caleb found the first group near the river, 3 girls clinging to one another, too terrified to move. He shouted, arms wide, his voice cutting through the smoke, promising safety, guiding them like a shepherd through hell. One by one, he led them to the clearing near the buses, then turned around and ran back in. Again. And again. And again. 17 times, he entered that wall of smoke and heat, sometimes crawling, sometimes carrying 2 children at once, other times coaxing boys and girls through the thick ash with stories of his farm animals, of Ella's favorite pie, of the stars they'd see if they just kept moving. He wrapped rags around their faces, soaked shirts in river water, and bore their weight on his back as his legs gave out from exhaustion. At one point, he tripped, bruising his ribs on a fallen branch, but still he rose. The pain didn't matter. What mattered were the children, their wide eyes, their trembling hands, their desperate need to believe that someone, anyone, would not abandon them. Hours passed like minutes, and when the fire crews finally arrived, the sky was orange and angry, the air electric with heat, but the field was filled with 17 children, all alive, huddled around an old man with blistered hands and a voice grown hoarse from shouting, a man who asked only, "Are they okay? Did I get them all?" Paramedics treated him for smoke inhalation and dehydration, but Caleb refused the stretcher. He stood beside Boone, watching as each child was reunited with their parents, tears flowing like rivers, while cameras began flashing, and officials in suits and uniforms stepped forward, their faces solemn with awe. In the days that followed, Caleb's name spread faster than wildfire. The story reached national news, his face appearing on headlines, "Farmer saves 17 kids from forest fire." The mayor declared a town holiday in his honor. The governor sent a medal. A reporter from New York tried to offer him a book deal. Caleb declined the attention. Did what any decent person would have done, he told them, his eyes fixed on the fields where sunflowers had started to bloom, Ella's favorite. But not everyone let go so easily. One of the children, a boy named Marcus who had nearly drowned crossing a flooded gully, began visiting Caleb every weekend with his mother, bringing fresh bread, laughter, and the kind of questions only a child dares to ask. Were you scared? Did you think we'd make it? Do you miss your wife? Caleb, at first hesitant, slowly began to open, the wall around his heart cracking under the weight of this small, curious boy who called him Mr. C and brought life back into a home long haunted by silence. And then, one golden afternoon, came the sound that shook the town to stillness, the roar of engines in the sky, louder and sharper than any storm. Caleb stepped outside, shielding his eyes, and there, cutting across the endless blue, were 3 fighter jets in a perfect V formation, flying low over his farm, their wings gleaming in the sunlight, one dipping in salute as they passed. It was a tribute, organized by the Air Force Veterans Association and cleared through Washington, to honor not just Caleb's service in Vietnam, but the courage he showed when no one else had stood their ground. The jets thundered overhead, and for a moment, Caleb stood frozen, the wind whipping through his hair as Boone barked joyfully at the sky. Then, quietly, he removed his cap, placed it over his heart and wept, not for the pain, but for the love, the gratitude, the overwhelming grace of being seen after a lifetime of being invisible. The flyover became an annual tradition. Each July 14th, the town gathered on his property, children waving flags, veterans saluting, neighbors weeping as the jets roared above, and Caleb, now simply Grandpa Caleb, to dozens, stood beneath the old oak tree with Boone, surrounded by the laughter he and Ella had once only dreamed of. And the story didn't end there. With the help of local leaders and one determined school principal, the Whitaker Kids Foundation was born, a nonprofit devoted to giving underprivileged youth access to safe outdoor camps, complete with trained staff, medical oversight, and scholarships funded by donations that poured in from across the country. Caleb's barn became a museum of sorts, walls lined with thank you notes, crayon drawings, medals, and a giant wooden sign carved by Marcus himself that read, "Love lives here." He never asked for any of it. Fame didn't interest him. What mattered were the visits, the kids who stopped by with pies and poems, the veterans who brought old war letters and saluted him with trembling hands, the parents who hugged him tightly and whispered thank you with tears that said what words could not. One summer evening, as the sky turned pink and the breeze carried the scent of honeysuckle, Marcus brought him a small wooden box. "My mom says you should have this," the boy said softly. Inside was a silver locket, engraved with Ella's initials, containing a photo Caleb hadn't seen in years, her wedding portrait, smiling as if she knew this day would come. Caleb clutched it to his chest and whispered, she always wanted a family, and for the first time, he felt that dream had come true. The house, once still, now echoed with voices and stories and life. Boone had new playmates. The porch was rarely empty. Caleb, once forgotten, had become the heartbeat of a town, the symbol of a truth often lost in modern times, that courage doesn't always wear a uniform or speak loudly, sometimes it moves quietly through fields, waiting for a moment to bloom. And in the end, when his time came, Caleb passed peacefully in his sleep, Boone curled beside him, a smile on his lips and Ella's locket in his hand. At his funeral, held beneath the same oak where the children once played, 17 now-grown men and women stood in a row, each lighting a candle and telling the world how one man's bravery had given them not just a second chance, but a lifelong belief in goodness. And just as the final prayer ended, the sky once again trembled, 3 jets soaring in formation, one pulling upward in the traditional missing man salute. The town looked up, hearts lifted, and though the world would continue to rush forward, somewhere in Granger, Kansas, on a sun-drenched farm where sunflowers swayed in the breeze and memories clung to the soil, the legacy of Caleb Whitaker, the man who saved 17 children and gave a broken town back its soul, would live on forever.